everyone, it's another episode of the Future Skills podcast brought to you by Universal Skills Group. In this episode, we're joined by Maria from Merit Skills. Like USG, Merit Skills are part of the short-term group. I'll be asking Maria how she got involved in training and also what Merit Skills bring to the training sector. Hi Maria, welcome to the Future Skills podcast.
Hi, thank you. Nice to be here.
Thank you very much for joining today. Really keen to get you on as part of the short-term group. Of course, Universal Skills have recently been acquired by short-term, and the Merit Skills team form part of the short-term group. And I wanted to have you on the podcast to firstly understand a little bit more about yourself and the Merit Skills group. How did your career get started, Maria? Interested to know what took you along the pathway to Merit Skills and how you formed part eventually of short-term.
Okay, so I finished university. I did my degree in educational research and psychology, and I wanted to go and find a graduate management programme, preferably in London, away from home. And whilst I was applying for that, I took a temp position at Develop Training, and I worked for Cheryl Foreman in her team of, she at the time headed up the management training team. So I worked in there doing administration, just training coordination really, as a temp. And I stayed basically. I didn't carry on applying for graduate schemes, and I didn't move away from home. I was having too much of a good time there, and it was a great opportunity. So I did that role for, I don't know, best part of probably 6-9 months. And then a role came up to lead a training coordination team on the technical side. So I moved from management development training into water, which was what the water team was at the time, and started managing a team of 3 training coordinators there. And I did that for a while. And basically that was really made up of an Anglian Water contract at the time. They had a really big contract developed with Anglian Water, probably $1 million plus a year, doing all their technical and health and safety training. So we organised that. We put in new systems, new processes for the administration, which was great. And then a couple of years went by and Develop acquired Water Training International, which was known as WTI, which was set up originally as the training company for the water industry. And I think water companies probably supported that and paid into that, but it became a commercial entity. So Develop bought that, and that became part of our whole offering. Which was really interesting because that brought along gas, electrical, mechanical, and building services, rail. And so it was a really big training group really then. We obviously already had water and management development training. So we had 5 business streams really within the one training company then. So that was good. So I got to experience all the different areas really. So we went through a little bit of a restructure. I got promoted to business director for client services. So my role was to look after all the admin, all the training coordination, but with a customer focus. So where we tendered for work and we won contracts, I'd be kind of the person that would go in and look at how they wanted all that to work from an admin, management information point of view, reporting, meetings, that type of thing. And I managed kind of more of the customer experience side of it, but with my team behind me, with training coordinators really, and their team leaders. So that was a really great opportunity because Develop then won a really, really big contract with National Grid.
Right.
And so I helped and worked alongside the team that managed that contract. Just got a lot more experience outside of water, I guess. And then, Develop moved on. It grew really well. It was a great company to work for. And we had some management changes. And at that time, myself and a couple of colleagues decided it was probably time to leave. And we found a financial investor and we set up Merit.
Very nice.
Yeah.
So how long in total was you at Develop for?
I might have to do some maths now. So I started 2000 and 2003, and we set up, I left it at the end of 2009, set up Merit 2010. So about 7-8 years.
Right, so quite a long period of time. And rolling back to when you first started at Develop, so you said you started in admin. How did you find the change of being sort of in an administration role to leading a team of people? Because one thing I've noticed is sometimes people can find that quite difficult, leading people when they've not been used to it. How did you adjust to that?
I do remember thinking, managing people, that I find that's always the most challenging but rewarding part of any role. And I do remember thinking, this is a bit of a jump, but I was quite ambitious and I knew I had to take it. I think having done the job of the people that I'm managing, I think that helped.
Yeah.
I think it would have been harder to just go in there and say, here I am, I'm your manager. Luckily for me, we were going through quite a bit of change there, and a few personnel have left, and I got to recruit my own team quite quickly into moving into that role. We had some temps in, and so I think that probably helped as well.
Yeah.
I didn't inherit too much, to be fair, because I could only have been about 22 maybe at the time.
Wow.
So yeah, and then the next roles, in terms of that kind of side of things and jumping up and progressing, I think they just came more naturally, not to me, but they happened over a period of time. And I kind of more, I suppose, grew into them a little bit more. But yeah, I think I really enjoyed my last role as business director of client services when I was at Develop. I learned a lot there, and that role was really good for me. It really opened up a lot of doors, and just looking at different companies and the way they worked, and having to work across all of the businesses within Develop and all of the managers and all the teams. It was really good. Yeah.
Did you ever wonder what would have happened if you'd have continued at university? Because you said you started as a temp and sort of never left.
Yeah, so no, not really. I've never really looked back in that way. I've always enjoyed everything I've been doing, and I think for me, the people have really made it along the way so far. And I guess the fact that I worked for Cheryl was my first role, and now we're back together within the short-term group, then I guess that kind of just cements that, really. I'm quite loyal. I enjoy who I work with. So yeah, no, I've never really looked back.
Yeah, I mean, you spend a lot of time at work, don't you? So it's really important to have that trust, and also to enjoy what you do, firstly, but also the people that you work with is crucially important for a successful business.
Yeah, I think in this business as well, and in training, it's all about the people. And I know you'll all hear that so many times, but it really is. And those experiences for our learners and our clients won't be any good unless the people love their jobs.
Yeah.
And it takes a team to kind of make that happen, doesn't it?
It does. By no means did I have a pathway to university, but I always remember, for me, finishing year 11 at the time and having no idea what I wanted to do, and getting an offer at the Leeds College of Building near where I lived. Didn't want to do it. I sort of passed the exam for it, and I thought, I really don't want to do that. So didn't do it. I ended up going to sixth form for 2 weeks. I just hated it. I thought, I don't really need to be here. I want to earn some money. I want to get a job. And I was just, as soon as I got a taste for being able to stand on my own 2 feet and, work and get reward for it, and then progress within something, I really wanted to go down that path. So I can see why you've done that, I suppose, because you've seen an opportunity in front of you. And at 22, wow, what an achievement to be leading the team.
It doesn't feel like it at the time. I think also I totally agree with that, wanting to work and get on with, life as such, because I was going to stay at university, and my plan was to do a postgraduate degree. I wanted to do educational psychology.
All right.
And work in schools. And but by the end of the 3 years, I was ready to work. So I changed tack, really. I didn't want to study anymore. And although actually now I always kind of have a bit of a yearning to do another qualification, that's kind of always been there. But at the time, I just didn't want to do it full time. I would always want to do it alongside work now. Yeah.
So the pathway that took you to Merit, and you set up Merit with a couple of people, you say, what is it that Merit do? What are your offerings, and what are you known for in the industry?
Yeah, so when we left to develop. So the two colleagues that I set the business up both left to develop as well. So we all knew each other. We knew we could work well together. They were predominantly in water. That was their background. They'd worked in water companies previously. So that was really going to be our footprint, was to set up a water training business and offer health and safety alongside it, that complemented the water technical training. So that's what we set about doing, really. So we had a small office in 2010, just the three of us. Like I said earlier, we did get a financial investor who was the fourth shareholder. So that was great. He was really supportive, a real entrepreneur. So that spurred us on, because we didn't really necessarily have those attributes, maybe as a group of three, that entrepreneurial flair, but we kind of learned that as we went. I think having worked in development, which is a bit more of a corporate, we were kind of a bit more used to that way of thinking, and we'd obviously worked with big corporate clients. So that was really good. Mark invested in the business and he pushed us on, which was what we needed, really. So we set up the business day one, did all the website and all that sort of stuff. And then the phone didn't really ring, and we kind of thought probably that we'd left develop and people knew about it, and the phone would ring, and it doesn't, does it? And I think that was probably the first biggest shock. And a couple of months rolled on, and we'd had a few bites of work, and we'd done a few courses here and there, but nothing massive. Northumbrian Water or Anglian Water hadn't come knocking necessarily, apart from to say hi and good luck. So yeah, we did that. So the first year was quite slow, and we were like, is this going to work? Is it not going to work? But we were throwing loads of energy into it, as you do.
Did you worry?
And then, pardon?
Did you worry at all in the first year?
I think if we'd been on our own, we would have worried. But I think because we were essentially had some backing, less so. That sounds quite bad. And then obviously there was three of us in the office all the time. So, and we get on really well. And I think that kind of carried us on a bit. We spurred each other on. We're like, no, come on, it is going to happen. And we've spoken to this person, and we've called that person. We've done another mail shot, all those things. And I think if you'd been on your own doing it, I think you probably would have given up. Well, I probably would have done, to be fair. I had to have those, some people around me, I guess. But we did continue, obviously. And at the end of 2010, we got the offer of moving into the training centre where we are now. So that had been set up by Bar Hale, and we got wind that they were going to move out of it. So we went to look at it and took on the lease, basically. And that was what changed the business in that first couple of years. Having a centre and being able to say we can now do confined spaces and street works and get all our centre approvals in place. Yeah. Although we didn't do masses of it, it seemed to just spark some interest. It gave us kind of a foundation, and the work actually did start to come in from different water companies and so on. And that really helped. Even though they didn't necessarily come to the centre, it felt like there was more substance behind us. Yeah. And then we just grew from there, really. Tendered for work, won work, started winning work over our competitors. We just carried on like that, really. In the water industry, it's really word of mouth. There's not loads of places you can advertise for courses. It really is about doing a good job, and it gets passed on. So that started to happen, and people started recommending us.
Best way to get work, word of mouth, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely.
And at Merit Skills, you deliver apprenticeships? Yes.
So we started doing apprenticeships in 2012, I think. To begin with, they weren't, they were apprenticeships, but they weren't like proper funded apprenticeships. So we used to follow the apprenticeship route frameworks at the time, but our customers used to just pay us commercially to do them. They didn't want to get involved in funding and all the red tape. Right. And so we only really started doing the apprenticeships through ESFA funding when levy was introduced. And then obviously they really didn't have a choice as to pay commercially. They had these big levy payments that were being made every month, and they wanted to use it. So come the levy, we started delivering apprenticeships in conjunction with ESFA funding.
I think that was a big game changer for a lot of people with levy funding. And I still find today quite shocking that a lot of people, big companies, still are not massively educated around just how they can potentially utilise what they have to spend. I don't know if you found that, but we've certainly come across some large companies that didn't realise what they could do with it.
Yeah, definitely. I think in the water industry, obviously, there's not lots of water companies. Obviously, they're geographically and regionally spread.
Yeah.
So that doesn't make for many customers in that way. Obviously, their supply chain pay the levy as well. I think in the supply chain, you'll see that more. In the water companies, I think they have now just about probably got to the point where they're spending the majority of the levy, or they're doing exactly what they need to do for their business and using the levy to support that. Some of them have really massive levy payments, and I doubt that it's all used, but I think it's definitely got better in the last year or two, for sure. Of supply chain definitely probably won't be using all of theirs and don't realise how they can necessarily use it. But yeah, it's hard, isn't it? It's hard to set up. It needs a lot of infrastructure around it. Even if you're an employer and you've got a provider doing the majority of the training and the assessment and getting them from EPA, you've still got to have things in place at the employer end to manage those apprentices, keep them on track, absolutely. Keep them in roles. So yeah, it's a big investment.
Yeah, you've got to be fully involved and compliant and have a lot of support, and you really need that employer engagement. Very similar to Universal Skills, you're Ofsteded, and I know recently you've had a full inspection, and of course you'll have had a monitoring visit. How did that process go at Merit Skills?
So yeah, well, in the end, I guess, that was the outcome. Our monitoring visit happened a couple of years ago now, and I think we were all really, really nervous, to be fair. We didn't really know what to expect. But I have to say we had a great experience. We had 3 inspectors who were all lovely, brilliant to work with, and it was a good experience. And it's funny to say that, because you kind of don't expect to say that at the end of an Ofsted inspection. No. But we learned a lot during that monitoring visit, and I think that did kind of give us a little bit more confidence when it came to our full inspection. I mean, the nerves were still there, and have you got everything in place? Have you done everything? Have you ticked all the boxes? Have you got evidence of everything? They were still all the questions we were asking ourselves at our full inspection, despite having a good monitoring visit. But I think it did give us a bit of confidence to tackle the full inspection head on. Definitely. Yeah.
So you had somewhere to work from the monitoring visit. It gave you a good idea what the full inspection may be like. And
yeah, I think we very much had our fingers crossed that we had the same experience, and the inspectors were open with us and approachable and listened, because that's how they were at our monitoring visit. And that definitely happened in our full inspection as well, which I think, creates a better environment for you to work within during that week, because you feel like you can take stuff back to the inspectors, you can challenge, you can discuss things that are going on in your business, rather than it just be, we've seen this and this is the outcome. We very much felt part of that inspection, and all the inspectors made us feel part of it, which I think makes it the word enjoyable doesn't sound right, does it? But it made it a more enjoyable experience, definitely.
Yeah, I've been through 2 monitoring visits now, and we await our full inspection. And the first monitoring visit I went through probably 5 years ago now wasn't a nice experience. I think, the inspectors that we had, you just felt as if we'd done something wrong constantly.
Out to get you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always remember walking around with one of the inspectors, and they would just seemed to be, why are you doing that? And, that almost saying that's not right straight away. And that was sort of in the first couple of hours. And I remember going into a little meeting room that we had at the time, and you could have really cut through the air. It was that tense. But then fast forward to the monitoring visit we had at Universal Skills a couple of years ago, and that was a completely different experience. As much as they were thorough, and you could tell they wanted to be compliant and check things and deep dive, as they say, into different parts of our provision. We had 2 inspectors for our monitoring visit, and we just felt as if we had a lot better dialogue with them. And whilst they wanted to know information, and they did ask challenging questions and probing questions, and we needed to submit evidence and show what we were doing, it was just a much better experience. So we're very much looking forward now to our full inspection, and we expect to have that this year. Moving on then, so thanks for that insight into the Ofsted stuff there at Merit Skills. It's interesting for us, and like I say, we're looking forward to ours, full inspection hopefully this year. Moving on, as I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, Universal Skills recently, we're about just over a month in now to our acquisition with Short Term. Very similar to what happened at Merit Skills. How did that come about with Short Term then? So you're as acquired, did you say? I think we spoke just before we began the podcast. Has it been just over 3 years now that you've been a part of the Short Term group?
Yeah, so it was the back end of 2018. Yeah. Right. So 3.5 years now. Yeah. And it's flown by, to be honest. Yeah. In terms of how it came about, we didn't take the business to market. We weren't necessarily looking to sell it. We knew Cheryl from our previous days at Develop, and so that's really how it came about with our links with Cheryl in terms of short term looking for acquisitions. And we had an initial discussion. I don't think we went in with any preconceived ideas as to whether we would sell or not sell. It really was all about the fit for us, because it wasn't necessarily something that we were aiming to do at that point in time. But we knew we wanted to grow the business, and we knew the way resources were, that as a kind of shareholder-owned business between the four of us, it was always going to be more difficult to make those massive investments in terms of taking on lots of trainers at the same time or investing in facilities. We went with it really, and we met Steve and Patrick with Cheryl and really liked both of them, and took it from there. So it's been really good for Merit, definitely.
Good. And like I said, we're just over we're just over a month in at Universal Skills with the acquisition. I have to say, my biggest fear was, probably wrongly as well, but my biggest fear was the staff. So I'm very protected over the staff. We have just over 20 employees now, and we worked so hard to form that team. And I remember, letting everybody know that the business had been acquired, and a huge shock, really, because nobody knew what, anything had been happening, because always a chance with these things that might not happen. But actually, Steve, Patrick, Cheryl, the first week they were on site constantly, and they really just had an open door in our boardroom for anybody to come and speak to them, ask them any questions, which helped so much put people at ease. And actually, by the end of the week, people had a spring in the step, and I was actually really surprised, just how receptive people were, because normally with change, people are, am I going to lose my job? Is everything going to change? Because we have a really happy workforce, but I have to say, so far, so good. And I've been really interested as well to get to know, other things about the Short Term group and how they're involved in things like the rail industry and things like the automotive industry and the airline industry as well. It's really interesting, and they're really, big players in parts of it as well, which is exciting. So, I have to say myself as well, so far, so good. So,
definitely. I think for us, it was probably slightly different in that we all own the business, stayed with the business. But I think the biggest thing for me is I felt a bit of a fraud. Like, I've been managing this team for 6-8 months and not said a word about what was going on. I think that was probably my biggest apprehension, was how people would, perceive that, and like, oh, you were busy then because you were doing that, not busy but doing something else. Or whatever. I think that was my probably biggest apprehension with it all, was kind of, I felt like I'd been working on something and not told everyone. And when you run a business, you do confide in people, and you do trust people with information when it's your own business and you're running it. And I think that's what I hadn't been doing necessarily for the last I think it was 6 to 8 months, to be honest. So that felt a bit foreign to me, not sharing what was going on. But same, all good from then on in, really, and people took it really well. A few of our trainers had come across and develop as well, so they obviously knew Cheryl previously. So that definitely helped. We had quite a big link there.
Yeah, no, that's really good. We had a tutor actually that straight away we'd made the announcement, and he said straight away, we've sort of put Cheryl, Patrick and Steve's faces on the board as part of the announcement to show who were coming in later on. And somebody just said straight away, a guy called John, one of our tutors.
Yeah.
I know that person, and I thought, I hope this is going to be good. And it was. It was like, look, I've had great experiences with it, you know, and I think that put the staff at ease as well. So that was really good. But I have to agree with you that one of the hardest parts for me was, obviously, there's lots of legalities to things like acquisition, and I always remember our former director, who had a part ownership in the business, saying to me at the beginning of this acquisition, "You'll be surprised just how long this takes and what information is required from both sides." And I thought, well, we're only a small business, so there can't be that much. But literally, you know, 9 months later, information was still being supplied, and that was the hardest part, that the staff couldn't know, because, of course, there was things like non-disclosure agreements in place, which I'm sure was the same for you.
Yeah, definitely. I think it is hard, and I think, you know, while you've asked people to say, well, can you just run this report for me because you need the information, or can you just look at this, and you kind of give no reason as to why. You're just like, can
absolutely.
I just have it? And have you got it now? And you're like, no reason for anything. So it is tough, and it takes a long time, doesn't it? You kind of feel like you're holding your nerve the whole time you're going through that process.
You do.
A bit like an Ofsted inspection, really.
yeah, but very, very
shorter.
A lot of information required. How did the pandemic, Maria, affect merit skills? The 2-year period there, really, especially the first sort of 12 months. How did that affect you guys?
That's a good question, and I think actually that's where short term really came in, and kind of we were always saying, "Oh, we're glad we sold," because when the first lockdown happened, the March one, the first one, we didn't deliver any face-to-face training. We literally stopped all that. We didn't deliver any training apart from our apprenticeships. So we did all that remotely. So that was quite a change for those apprentices. We'd had apprentices just start in the October, November, potentially, I think it was. They hadn't been on programme very long. And we had also others coming up to endpoint, because our endpoint, they usually end to endpoint sort of late spring, ready to kind of finish during the summer. Yeah. So we had the two extremes there with different sets of cohorts. So that was quite challenging, but we moved our delivery to Teams, did a lot of one-to-one stuff. We furloughed quite a few staff in that first lockdown, and we kept a core team doing the apprentices. But short term were great. They were so supportive. The people that were furloughed got paid 100% of their salaries. But if we hadn't have sold the business, I don't think we'd have been able to do that. Yeah. I don't think we'd have had that. We don't think we'd have had the cash flow to support that as a small business. So that, you know, that was really brilliant. And I think it put a lot of people at ease with their jobs and their roles. So we kept a core team, mainly the management. So we were all chipping in. So me and Pete and Jim, who I set the business up with, the three of us were all doing bits of the apprentices, because we were kind of filling our time a little bit, but also we needed the managers there to manage everything else that was going on. We kept one of our training coordinators unfurloughed, so to speak, the one that does the most work with the apprentices, because that's what we were doing. And then we'd planned just to start delivering face-to-face as that kind of initial lockdown period kind of ended. So by the time we got into summer, we were back doing face-to-face training. The other thing we did, which short-term supported us with and invested in, was put extra classrooms or bigger classrooms in the site at Yaxley, so that we could do social distancing in an easier, better way, really. So we had all new, we have mobile classrooms at Yaxley, and we have some inside, but as the years have gone on, they've kind of become offices as the team's grown. Right. And so we've got brand new mobile classrooms put outside, bigger, so we can fit, you know, probably 30 people in one of them now, quite spaced out as well, but we've had a partition put in so that we can use it as 2 classrooms and stuff. So short-term supported us with all of that financially to put all that in after the first lockdown, which got us back delivering face-to-face, really, and socially distanced, which was great, and with the same numbers. So we didn't really have to limit the numbers on our courses. We just put bigger rooms in. So that was fantastic. Yeah, no, it was hard, wasn't it? I mean, I remember when we went to have a look, I think in May time, myself and Darren
USG, and we're just having a look around and measuring out the 2 meters and just how on earth can we fit people in here safely to the requirements. It was so difficult, and we had to come back with reduced numbers, but very similar to you, we moved fully remotely to Teams. And I always remember actually at the beginning of April driving to the centre, so 2 or 3 times a week, because the bulk of our staff were on furlough, very similar to what you did there at Merit Skills. We had a core team who remained so that we could do things with the apprentices, and I was speaking to apprentices daily, so was the people that remained. And it was good actually, because some of them I didn't really ever get a chance to speak to, and it was just a crazy period, wasn't it? Other than the
was like doing reviews for apprentices. I'm like, well, I'll do their review, and someone else will do their review, and we're like looking at the last stuff they'd done with tutors maybe, and it's good. And it also it was a good period for kind of like, well, that needs putting right. When we all get back into the workplace, that needs changing, and this needs changing, and this review could be better. And so it was good in that way as well. But it's just managing the unknown all the time, isn't it? It's really hard, like what's going to happen next. But by the summer, we were back up and running face to face, and we haven't gone back from that in any of the periods since.
That's good.
That's been good, It's been easier since then to kind of every change that's come along, because our stance has been to deliver face to face, and we can do it safely because of the new classrooms. That's helped really.
Yeah, no, that's great. One thing I like to ask during these podcasts is, I mean, it's interesting, especially the 22 years old. I don't think you give yourself enough credit there. You're leading a team at 22. I think it's really impressive. What piece of advice would you give yourself if you could go back to your 17, 18-year-old self, leaving school, or about to go on to your venture of university or getting a job? What one piece of advice would you give yourself looking back?
That's a tough one, isn't it? Probably to worry less. I think over the years I've probably worried about things that probably aren't that big a deal really in the long run. So probably that, to be honest. I don't think it's ever really affected my work performance, but I think, you can spend time and energy worrying about things, can't you? And you could be doing something else more proactive and more positive, maybe. Yeah,
no, completely agree.
I think some of that stems from, putting yourself, I've always, with managing a team and stuff, it's, putting yourself in a position where you are a little bit vulnerable, you are a little bit out of your depth. That's probably where that worrying maybe came in a bit, I suppose. But I think if you don't put yourself out of your comfort zone, it's hard to learn, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a real skill as well. I remember first we used to have a training centre in Bolton, and when I started looking after that, I used to drive home from Bolton to Leeds and always get stuck in traffic on the M62, the worst motorway in the world, in my opinion. And I just used to worry about what if that happens, what if this happens, and the director at the time, Danny, just said to me, one of the best piece of advice anybody's ever given me, really simple, but what is the worst thing that can happen? And whenever I think about worrying now, I always go to, well, what's worst case scenario? Is the business going to finish tomorrow? That's just one example. But that's really helped me over the years. What is the worst case scenario? Right, okay, how can I overcome that? And that's always helped me. So
and a lot of the time you end up worrying about worst case scenarios that you can't actually do a lot about anyway.
No.
It's kind of a waste of your energy, isn't it?
It is. I mean, just look at the pandemic. What could we do about that? We were hands tied, weren't we?
It's day to day with that sort of thing, isn't it? It's a bit more kind of crisis management in a way.
Yeah. Well, it's been great to have you on the podcast, and it's been really interesting to learn more about Merit Skills and how you form part of short-term group, because of course Universal Skills are getting more and more used to the short-term group. I'm very much looking forward to working closely together with Merit Skills, and I'm sure that will develop over the coming months and years. What's the best way for people to get in contact with you, Maria? If people are interested in more to training or getting in touch with Merit Skills, what's the best way to do it?
Well, anyone can always contact me direct. On email or on my phone. We also have an info@Merit Skills inbox if anyone wants to contact via email there, or just pick up the phone. I'm a great believer in picking up the phone, talking to people. Pick up the phone really and just contact us. We'd be happy to help, happy to have any conversations or discussions.
Great. Excellent. Well, thanks again for joining the podcast. And we'll catch up soon, and looking forward to coming across and seeing you soon at the centre in Acton.
Brilliant. You're always welcome. Thank you.
Thanks, Maria.
Big thanks to Maria for joining the latest episode of the Future Skills podcast. Hope you enjoyed the episode. Be sure to like, subscribe and share this latest episode.